Now let me go on to the next speaker. From the medical field, Asian philosophy, reconsidering the mind and body from an Oriental holistic viewpoint. We have invited Mr. Toshiro INABA, who is a medical doctor or PhD. Hello, everybody. I am a doctor, but I have a cold. I apologize. So I might be coughing, but please don't interpret that. So I apologize for the nasal voice. It may be a bit hard to hear, but I will try my best. So my topic is the Asian holistic viewpoint of the mind and body. The Eastern or the Asian way looks at nature as parts being part of the whole and the whole being part of the parts. In the earth, there are trees and water and light, but in this light, all the truth of the earth is also encapsulated. And the same for the human body. The nature inside and the nature outside is all interlinked. So is this unique to Asia? I don't think so. But this first picture is looking at Japan from the continent. And you can see very clearly that the Japanese archipelago was part of the larger continent in the past. And about 200 million years ago, there was the Pangea continent. And this Pangea continent split and broke apart or combined together several times every hundreds of millions of years. In the most recent history of having the Pangea was the 250 million years ago. And you see that Japan is connected to China and Russia and then Africa and so on. So in the past, this was all one big continent. But these continents broke apart. Maybe several hundred million years later, all these continents will become one again. And this is the natural history of Earth. And our human body is made up of similar aspects. So the human body is made of 60 trillion cells. 60 trillion cells is difficult to imagine, but our Earth has 7.5 billion people, and if we consider one cell as one person, then the 60 trillion cells equates to 7,000 Earths. So we have the 60 trillion beings or cells inside, and so we are all human beings at the time of birth are given this nature inside of our bodies. And this internal nature interacts and reflects with the nature outside. This was the intuitive understanding of the ancient people. So where is the difference between East and West? I believe that it is the difference between the ego and self. On the left-hand side, we see the Oriental concept, and the right-hand side, the Western concept. And in Japan, the ego is closer to the deep consciousness. In this slide, shallow or surface consciousness is at the top, and the deep unconsciousness is on the bottom. And in Japan, the consciousness is close to the deep consciousness, and the Westerners' consciousness is closer to the consciousness. So it is more outward looking, whereas the Oriental consciousness is more inward looking. So observing and controlling nature, controlling the outside world, that is the outside consciousness. On the other hand, the Oriental consciousness is more to the unconscious or internal self. So rather than observing the outside world, the Oriental consciousness tends to focus more on the observing the inside world, internal world. So I said that there was a Pangea continent, and then the continent broke apart, and this is it's a cycle for every hundreds of millions of years. And actually, something similar is happening in our body as well. We start from the single cell, the oocyte cell. And that's the left-hand side. That's from the mother. And from the father, we get the sperm. And that's also a single cell. In our body, there are 60 trillion cells, but actually, it all starts from the combination of two single cells, the oocyte and the sperm. And so this is 1,100 times expanded from the left-hand side and 500 times expanded for the sperm. In the case of the oocyte, there are 750,000 eggs made in the fetus, and every month, out of that, about 500 eggs grow, and during the puberty, and it is ovulated with the moon cycle. And so out of the 600 million sperm in the 3 million semen, the one sperm meets the one oocyte, and then there will be the division of these cells. The right-hand bottom picture shows the first cell division. So one cell to one cell combines, and then there is a division of the cells. And then there's further division of the cells, and ultimately it becomes 60 trillion cells. And during this process, the heart and the brain develops. For example, the central picture shows the 18th day, and the red, that's the heart at the middle. And the first, the heart beating can be confirmed on day 18. So the bodily organs are formed day by day, and you can see that you are pregnant by measuring the heartbeat. And then the brain develops on day 24. And on the 5th week, it's only about a 9 millimeter face of the, but from gradually the face forms, depending on the genes from your parents. But actually, initially in this week 5, everybody looks the same. And so 10 week, 16 week, 18th week, you can see the hands. And on the 36th week, the baby is ready to go outside. So it is said that Japanese babies are born at minus 1 year, meaning that we are born 1 year ahead of where we should be born. The reason was because the Japanese people's brains became bigger and bigger. So when if you are born at the optimal time, then the baby's brain is too big. So that is why babies are born prematurely in that sense, and weak. But because babies are born so weak, they need to be taken care of, and that is how families and society forms, that is unique to other animals. So these 60 trillion cells form our human body, and actually each organ are all made up of living cells. We see the tactile sense, the vibration sense, smelling sense, taste sense, auditory sense, and visual sense cells. For example, the olfactory cell looks like the sun, doesn't it? And the auditory sense is like a hair cell. And depending on where the cell is lined up by which hertz, you can sense the sound. And there is the color sensing cell and the light sensing cell that combines together. So these are all living cells, but actually dead cells protect the human body. Actually, our skin epidermis is made up of dead cells. But this creates the coating, that waterproof barrier. And you see the picture of the cell, which is in various layers. like scales to protect the human body. So our body is very complicated and very intricate, but actually living beings are all quite complicated. And you see the mammal on the right-hand bottom, that's a horse, but then actually you go birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, and then more simple, frog, locust, planarian, and hydra. So very simple diffused nervous system start to form shape, and then they are allocated and further become complicated more and more, and then finally the human nervous system is formed. So in this very complicated nervous system, our consciousness is formed. Actually, the consciousness and unconsciousness are a form of rhythm. Consciousness look toward the external world, and unconsciousness look toward the inner world. And actually, we need to have this cycle between consciousness and unconsciousness, or awakening and sleep. We always have to have this cycle. And by striking the balance between the consciousness and unconsciousness, we can live our lives. And unconsciousness could be sleep, but also mediation as well, or dreaming. And that's this unconsciousness, or the inner world, I believe, is dream, mediation, art, as well as medicine. In Japan, we have the word of body-mind unity, meaning that the body and the mind are inseparable. And in the Eastern concept, brain, which is consciousness, could create a separate reality, like a fake virtual reality. So that is why it is always important to look at the harmony between the conscious brain and the unconscious body and mind. So the Eastern concept always focuses on the body, the mind, or the heart, and nature, which are all unconscious, and self and the ego is always looking inward. This picture, the top part of the circle is consciousness, and the bottom half of the circle is unconsciousness. And actually, we are always flowing between this consciousness and unconsciousness. Actually, if we are just only in this conscious era, then we are becoming superficial, only looking at outward success. On the other hand, if we just dwell in the unconscious area, then we could be depressed or too inward looking. So we always have to have this flow between these different conscious and unconscious stages. And I think that the energy for the mind in that sense should be culture and art. And what I'm describing, I don't think is exemplified in Japanese medicine, but rather in the traditional arts and beauty. For example, or tea ceremonies, or calligraphies, or the Aikido or the Shinto ceremonies. And there is the secret, the wisdom to not be swayed by the brain's virtual reality through these arts and beauty. I myself practice No in the Zeami school, and under in the book written by Zeami called The Flowering Spirit, it says that the secret of No is that performing arts makes the heart peaceful, equal, and increases happiness. And this is the law of nature that extends life. And I feel that this is actually medicine itself. So the people who have mastered these arts have obtained the happiness of the universe. And this was how the expressions for tea ceremonies or calligraphies were born. So this is my last slide. In the Mahayana Buddhism, there is a concept called Indra net. And actually this is depicted in the Narcissus Garden by Yayoi Kusama, shown on the left-hand bottom picture. What is Indra net? Indra net is that on the there is all these orbs and jewels tied at the knots of the net, and these countless jewels reflect one another, and every jewel contains every jewel. So this is the same for our human body. Our human body is a microcosmos and contains the macro or nature cosmos inside, and similarly the macrocosmos have a microcosmos inner body inside. So in that sense, I think the process for restoring the wholeness of the body is art and medicine. And I think that wisdom is held in the Eastern consciousness and unconsciousness. Thank you very much. I have extended my time, but I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Inaba.
ね、本当にその東洋と西洋の
So consciousness and unconsciousness of the Oriental viewpoint. That was very interesting.